Tomorrow everyone, Silvershire here, and before the video begins, two quick things. Number one, this is my first recording in the new place, so let me know how I sound. I don't have the studio set up yet, so I'm just recording in my bedroom like I usually do, but I can try to make some adjustments if I'm echoey or if there's a lot of background noise or anything like that, so let me know. Number two, if all goes to plan, next Monday will be the first episode of a series that I've been working on for a very, very long time, so please be sure to tune in and check it out. So now that that's out of the way, let's get to the actual point of the video, which is these. These are the latest experimental patch notes for Overwatch. For those of you who don't know, experimental mode is a place where Blizzard tests out some big wild changes to gauge player feedback. And usually I don't care too much about it, but this newest one is super exciting. I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but I really hope that some of these changes make it through to the final game. There's one in particular that I am ecstatic about, so this is just going to be a casual, unscripted video where I read these out and share my reactions. And in the background I'll have some footage of me testing out the new changes. So without any further ado, let's get into this. Ana mostly just got some nice quality of life changes. Her rifle reloads faster, targets left with the sleep dart will have an icon appear above them, which is super helpful. That is definitely something that they should keep around. And it also has a notification in the kill feed when someone gets slapped, which I don't think that is as big of a deal, but it's still nice. And she can put turrets to sleep now, which might seem weird at first, but I mean, she can put robots to sleep, so there's really no reason not to. And as a console player, I especially like this because, let me assure you, we do not deal with turrets well on console. And Nano Boost now, instead of healing the target, makes them receive more healing, which I think is really nice, because that encourages Ana to be more active. She can't just Nano Boost and forget about it. She needs to, you know, still be pumping up the tank, or not necessarily the tank, whoever she Nano Boosts. But also that could potentially be way more healing than just the flat HP boost. So I think that really encourages skillful play, so I think that's great. Baptiste is not very exciting in either of the changes they made to him. He can jump a little bit higher, which is fine. His immortality field doesn't last as long, but it keeps people at a slightly higher health. His amplification matrix is a little bit weaker, but now he's able to self-heal while it's active. And there's a lot of changes like this in these patch notes that I'm not very fond of, where it's like, wow, this thing is active, you get this completely unrelated thing, which I don't like because it's just unintuitive. I think Overwatch does a very good job with its passive abilities and with the way that things interact with each other, of things just making sense. It's like, oh, I do that thing happens, that makes sense. So when you get things like, while this random square is on the field, he's suddenly able to heal himself with his grenades, like, that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's bad from a balance perspective, it's just weird. Anyway, moving on to Brigitte, the big change is that her Inspire stops after she dies, which I think is a good change both for balance and because, I mean, the whole point is that she's inspiring her teammates. It's hard to be inspiring when you get shot in the head and fall to the ground, so I think that makes sense. She can shield bash further, that's great. And here's another one of those weird changes. Whip Shot just becomes like a totally different ability when her ultimate is active, which I don't like. Lucio, first change is nothing major. He deals more damage while he's wall riding, that's cool. The really cool change is that enemies that are in the area of effect of Sound Barrier are now knocked back 6 meters. I think that's great, because it helps Lucio keep the enemies off him. You might remember in a recent video I tried to Sound Barrier and just get wrecked and knocked off the map and into the water and basically ruin it for my whole team. That really sucked, so this might help with that. Also, this is the opposite of what I've been complaining about. That's super intuitive. Like, he sends out this huge shockwave moving out from him. It makes sense that that knocks enemies away. So I like that. But here we go. Mercy. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jeff Kaplan. I know you're not working on the game anymore, but I know that your spirit was with them. My girl is back. She's returned from the war. They reverted Mercy. It's like 2015 or whenever Overwatch came out all over again. Valkyrie is no longer an ultimate ability. Resurrect is now Mercy's ultimate ability. Can resurrect up to 5 people at once. Yes! Thank you so much, Blizzard. Please put this in the actual game, and if you don't, I am never playing Overwatch again. This is all that I've wanted for so long. I used to be a Mercy main. And I have had some fun with her after the fact, but it's just never been the same. This is my Mercy. This is the Mercy that I want to play as. Wow. I'm getting my hopes up. I know it's not going to happen. I know that Blizzard just wanted to raise the Mercy mains up a little bit so that it hurt more when they pushed us off the cliff. This isn't going to go through. They're going to nerf her, if anything. And they also made some changes to how Valkyrie works now. It doesn't heal as much, which makes sense because it's no longer an ultimate. Honestly, I don't know if it needs to heal at all. If it's not an ultimate, I don't think she needs healing to be increased. But I'm not going to complain about it, because I do not want them to nerf Mercy anymore. She doesn't fly quite as fast. All makes sense. They just made it, you know, balanced for a normal ability. And I am also excited about Moira's change. She has a new passive. Quick Melee now slows enemies by 30% for 1 second. I think that is really cool. Because first of all, I mean, she has these claws in the game and on almost all of her skins, and it's great that she uses those. I think that, you know, the more parts of a character's lore or appearance can be worked into their kit, I think that's always great. And I also just think that that's a fun ability to have, because we don't really have slowing in the game. Like, we have Mei freezing people. That's kind of it. And I think that that's just one of the things that makes perfect sense for Moira. It makes it easier for her to deal damage with her orbs. If enemies can't run away as quickly, I think that's great.
I forgot to mention Moira also got a biotic orb rework. I like it in theory, but it is very buggy and inconsistent, at least in my experience. It makes her rather unfun to play.
Zenyatta, this one just feels like a meme. I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to go through. Not because it's weird from a balance perspective, but it's just weird. He can just float now. He can just, like, float super high in the air, which is hilarious. And, I mean, makes sense from a lore perspective, because he's floating anyway, but it's just odd. This just feels like a meme, and I'm here for it, but it's very odd. One thing that I do think is cool, and I hope goes through into the final game, is that Orb of Harmony, which is his healing orb, now does different things depending on who it's on. If he puts it on a tank, they take less damage. If he puts it on DPS, they move faster. And if he puts it on a support, they heal more, which I think that's super cool. Especially because we know that Overwatch 2 is leaning way more into the different roles. Like, there's universal passives for all the roles, so I think that that's a really cool interaction. I like that. Symmetra, probably the second biggest change after... Actually, no, this is probably the biggest change. They made her a support. She deals way less damage, and now she can heal enemies... Or, heal enemies. She cannot heal enemies, that would be a bad thing. She can heal allies, her teleporter gives a speed boost, and I'm okay with this. I like all these changes. The one thing I don't like is that her sentry turrets now heal, which, I mean, that's not a sentry turret, that's a healing laser. I would be okay if they healed and did damage, like if they could lock onto an enemy and deal damage, or lock onto an ally and heal them. I think that would be fine, but turning them into just a healing thing is weird. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like what they did to D.Va. They let her float like Mercy, but I really don't like that for her. I mean, she is mobile, but she's also in a big mech. I feel like it's just weird for her to float like that, but I especially don't like it because of the drawback that they gave her. Her fusion cannons deal half the damage, which is a big nerf. Like, I would be fine with bumping the damage down a little bit, but cutting it in half, that seems insane to me. That is a lot less damage that she can put out. They give her a big ultimate charge for blocking an enemy ultimate, which is exciting, but I don't think very necessary, because completely deleting an enemy's ultimate is its own reward. And she can boost a little more often, which is, you know, nice, but again, don't think super necessary. Orisa, I don't really like these changes either, but I barely play Orisa, so I don't really mind as much. She has a lot more health, which that part is fine. Fortify now increases her speed, which is the exact opposite of what it should do. And Holt now brings enemies towards her instead of towards a point of your choosing, which is way less helpful. And Supercharger now slows enemies down instead of boosting allies, which, like, again, that's not a supercharge. That just doesn't make sense. She's not charging anything, she's slowing down enemies. Which, it does kind of make sense in the context of this experimental mode, because a lot more characters have speed boosts now, but I just don't like it. But again, never play Orisa, so I don't really mind. Ana, Justice, Reinhardt, Reinhardt, Reinhardt! Gets more armor, which is always nice. His charge works a little bit more like it's going to an Overwatch 2. He can't steer it, but he can cancel it. And it's a little bit faster, and he can pin multiple targets. That's all great. This is a weird one. Enemies hit by Fire Strike now receive 50% less healing for 4 seconds. That's another one of those unintuitive things. Like, why does getting hit with a fireball make you harder to heal? Especially because there is a way more obvious debuff that they could apply if they wanted to. This is actually something that I thought they should give Reinhardt for a long time. Make Fire Strike set people on fire. Like, we have Ashe's Dynamite and Torbjorn's Lava now that can set enemies on fire, so apply that to Fire Strike as well. That would do basically the same thing, because you are harder to heal when you're on fire by virtue of constantly taking damage. And it makes a lot more sense, and I just think that it's cooler. So, I would prefer Fire Strike set enemies on fire instead of giving them this weird healing debuff, but, yeah, I think Reinhardt's fine. Winston, this is a fun one. I like this. When he lands from using his big jump, he launches enemies into the air, which I think that's fun and makes sense as, like, cow control? I was about to say cow control. It makes sense as crowd control. Helps him disrupt the enemy team. He can, you know, knock them up into the air and then shock them all with his Tesla cannon. I think that's fun. And he can now do like a Mega Punch while he's in Primal Rage by charging up his attack, which I think that is super fun. It reminds me of the Doomfist trailer, that animated fight scene between Doomfist and Overwatch, where it ends with Winston activating Primal Rage and doing that big punch. I think that's super cool. I love the Winston changes. Echo can now heal herself by killing enemies, which I think that's a nice change. It makes sense with her kit, because her ultimate heals herself, and her laser beam, that I forget the name of, is really good at getting kills, not so much at dealing damage, but specifically at killing off weaker enemies. So I think that that makes a ton of sense for her to have. It plays to her existing strengths. Genji got some pretty significant reworks. His dash is now weaker, but he has 2 charges of it. So if he does it twice in a row, it's actually more damage than his single dash used to be. I'm fine with that change. I think it makes sense because he's supposed to be, you know, a speed-based character, so I'm okay with giving him more attacks that are slightly weaker. Dragon Blade, this is another one of those just unintuitive things. After he's done with Dragon Blade, he gets a temporary attack boost, which I think that's weird. I just don't like that. It doesn't. Why does putting his sword away temporarily make him better at shurikens? Like, I just don't like that. I do not like the changes that were made to Hanzo. The first one is fine. His Dragon Strike spawns immediately if the arrow hits terrain. That's fine. But they replaced Storm Arrow with this just temporary buff. He can jump a little bit more, he can fire a little bit faster, but I just don't think that's nearly as exciting as having another kind of arrow attack to use. Just giving yourself a boost is the most boring ability you can have. Like, I just think that this is a lot less exciting to use. It's fine from a balance perspective. I can even see some fun moments where you're just flaring out these arrows at a super rapid pace, but I really see no reason to do this. Junkrat is a weird one. He is now silent. His footsteps have been completely removed, so he's basically become a ninja now. This feels like another one of those meme things like Zenyatta floating that there's no way this is actually going to go through. It's fun just as a goofy thing, but it's very weird, and I don't think is going to stick around. A more reasonable change is that his Riptire has increased movement speed when detaching from walls. I like that change. Mei's changes I like a lot. These both make sense and are fun. First, melee attacks on fully frozen targets deal 100% increased damage. So what this is encouraging Mei to do is to freeze an opponent and then just run up and punch them in the face. Which, I mean, come on, who doesn't want to do that? That's so much fun. And that's also, I believe, I wasn't able to test it, but I think that applies to everyone. I think if anyone punches a frozen target, it deals increased damage. So that makes Mei more of a team player also, so I like that. And then another one that both makes sense and is very fun is that if she pops an ice wall beneath herself or a teammate or even an enemy, they go flying into the air, which is just a ton of fun. It creates shenanigans, it creates some really weird teamwork strats that you can pull off, helps Mei get to better vantage points. I just think that that's a great change, and like I said, it makes sense because it's this giant pillar of ice suddenly appearing beneath you. Of course that would give you some air. I'm not a fan of the Ashe changes. The Viper no longer reloads ammo individually, now reloads all ammo in 2.25 seconds. Which, I mean, that sounds at first like a good thing. Like, oh, you don't have to wait for her to put all those bullets back into her gun. But I don't like it for two reasons. Number one, I just think that that's like a fun, stylish thing that she needs to put the bullets in her gun one at a time. I just think that that is a cool thing, because there's no other heroes that function like that, and it makes sense for her weapon. But that also means that there's less decision-making. There's none of those things where you just put one bullet in your gun and then stop reloading and fire it, and you get that one perfect headshot with that one bullet that you put in there, which I think that is some of the most fun that you can have with Ashe. So I'm kind of sad to see that go. Cassidy, my boy, he just got straight up nerfed. He has less health, they completely removed Fan the Hammer, and in exchange they just made his weapon a little bit faster. He can't combat roll as often or do it in the air, and all he gets in exchange is some reduced visual effects while he's using Deadeye. Like, I'm sorry, that's a no for me. That's those are some lame changes. Reaper got some really cool buffs. Well, actually just one really cool buff, but it is really, really cool. Just that he can now Shadow Step while in Wraith form, which is a big deal. Because, most importantly, it gives him a get-out-of-jail-free card. If he's taking damage, he can just turn invincible and then teleport far away. But also, getting into the action, he can be invincible while starting up his Shadow Step, so that he doesn't have to worry about taking damage while he's standing still. So, this change really makes him feel like a ghost. He can slip in and out of the combat. He's really hard to pin down, really hard to hurt. I think it's a ton of fun. I think it's very thematic. Might be a little overpowered, but I think it's cool. Thought this was gonna be a quick video. I've been recording for 30 minutes. Goodness. The Tracer changes make sense. What they did is her ultimate now charges twice as fast, but it deals a lot less damage, which I think makes sense because Tracer is all about speed. So I think it makes sense that she can charge up her ultimate really quickly, even though she doesn't do quite as much damage with it. I think that this fits perfectly into her character archetype. It also just makes Pulse Bomb less of a risk to use, because if you totally whiff, or if you put it on a bad target, you don't have to wait as long to get another one. and you're not missing out on as much damage if you don't use it well. So, yeah, I like this. It does mean that she's not as good at, like, assassinating a single target, but I think it's fine. And lastly is Widowmaker, and I really like the changes that they made to Widowmaker, because they encourage her to be more of a defensive recon sort of character, which is, you know, what she was always meant to be. She's a sniper with wall hacks. Venom Mine can now place up to 3 active mines, and they deal a little less damage and don't last as long. But that is a really cool change, because that means that she can cover more of the map. You could basically put a mine on every entrance to wherever you're holed up sniping, or you could just place them on all corners of the map so that you know where enemies are and you can call that out to your teammates. I think that's a really cool change to her kit. Also, the speed of the projectile has been increased, which means that, like Junkrat, if she's in the thick of things, she can, instead of using it as a trap, just shoot it right at enemies, and it's a lot more likely that it's actually going to hit and start dealing damage. So this gives her a lot more utility, I think, because Venom Mines don't really kill. I mean, they do deal damage, which can be useful, but that's not the main point. The main point is that it lets you know where enemies are, so I don't think that the nerf to damage or duration are a big deal, and I think that being able to have multiple of them more than makes up for it. And with that, I'm going to leave this video here. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, I bid thee farewell.